So I'll call the meeting to order. And the first item on the meeting is we need to do sort of an oddball thing to do nominations for the chair and the vice chair. So we'll open up for nominations.
I'll nominate Phil Couch as chair and move to appoint
My second.
For a year.
for a year.
1 year, yeah.
Yep.
I'm happy to do it unless somebody else wants to jump in. So we'll vote on that motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, I'm honored, and maybe I'll do a good job this year, hopefully.
And I'd
Certainly a
like to
learning
nominate
experience.
Aaron Kimball for vice chair.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I'll accept that role again this year as well.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye? All right, very good.
We're in for a year.
Yeah, and I'll certainly speak for myself. I said this last year. Anytime it doesn't seem like I'm doing something right, or you have suggestions, or give me a call, or whatever, I certainly try to take it serious. So,
No meetings after 11.
yes. Yes.
So I would like to say I'm very grateful for the work you've done this past year. I think you've done a great job. And I usually go home for the meetings thinking, wow, what a great job Phil did.
Oh, good. Well, thanks. There's always room to improve, but. All right, so,
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
for.
Premature disclosure would jeopardize the town's position.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second it?
All those in favor of that motion, we're going to go into executive session, and the motion's that premature disclosure of information would put the town at jeopardy. All those in
Should say what
favor?
we're discussing.
Well,
then,
that's
right?
the
Then-
second
Yeah,
motion.
that's the second motion. We're getting it. All those in favor?
10 years, we'll get it.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, and then,
I'll make a motion to go into executive discussion to discuss legal matters related to wastewater permit and Observatory Road.
and Observatory Road, and so the wastewater permit's a draft permit that's being contested. So we will speak with legal counsel on how the town, what the town's role would be,
Yep.
what would be appropriate. We'll discuss Observatory Road, which is a legal contract that the town had with the developer. And then we can also discuss progress on the MOU with CSWD.
Okay.
So,
And we'll include the attorney, Joe McLean, Renee Marshall, and Joy Dubin-Grossman.
okay, and it's under provisions 1 VSA 313 A1 and A3, I think.
Okay.
I'll second if nobody did.
Okay, nobody did. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that motion passed. So Ken, we will come back in about 30 minutes or maybe less.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. We've just come out of executive session, talking about our draft wastewater permit, which is under legal challenge. We didn't talk about two other topics. We wanted to Observatory Road and the MOU with CSWD. So I'd suggest that our agenda change and then we add another executive session at the end of the meeting, just prior to adjourning.
But
If
just
that's okay.
Continue the executive session.
Yeah, we could table it until,
Table it.
table it until the end of the meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. So the next thing on the agenda is the certificate for Burnett's Salvage Yard. We talked about this at our last meeting. There were a couple of steps that had to happen, including a public meeting and put it in the newspaper.
Yeah,
So,
so we did all those steps. It was warned in the Citizen We actually, in addition to what was required by state statute, we sent letters out to all the abutting property owners as well. So I think we've definitely followed all of those steps and added a couple more.
Is there any more discussion on this? Nobody's here to talk about it?
Oh,
Huh?
So I need a signature from the board.
Yes, yeah.
So should I make a motion?
Yes, I think
I'll make
so.
a motion to approve the application of Burnett's Scrap Metal LLC on Route 116 for their operation.
And signatures required of the board, or?
Yep, so the
The-
board needs to sign. On the back, I put what was placed on the back of all the other ones, which just has the performance standards set forth in the zoning bylaws of the town of Hinesburg. State statute 5.12 shall be applicable to the applicant's operation on the premises in question. And it also goes on to talk about the fence and vegetation screening on the property. Screen the property from public view, must be placed in good repair and condition, maintained in good repair and condition, and must comply with the standards for such screening set forth in state statute 24 VSA 2257 and applicable agency of transportation regulations. And then the granting of this application shall in no way indicate the select board's approval of future activities on the property or the select board's acknowledgement that future activities upon the property will be in compliance with the zoning bylaw of the town of Hinesburg. And it just,
Okay.
so it's just the same. It's been on the others.
So a motion?
I'll
Yeah.
second that for you.
Okay.
All right.
I did have one discussion item.
Oh, okay.
Was just not in regard to this application, but in general to, I think I wrote an email about it, was whether we should also, in anticipation of potentially doing something on stormwater, this is a situation where we might want to just take a look at it in the future, the next time this comes up, and be aware of situations like this where there are no need for stormwater permits. I assume that this is grandfathered in, and so,
We have a stormwater permit from the state.
oh, you do? Oh, okay, all right, yeah. So I guess I would want to make sure that it's in compliance, and that's all. So,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion for Burnett's Scrapyard approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And motion's passed. And so we'll sign that at the end? Or-
Yeah,
We can sign it
you can
now,
just
and
sign it
then-
now because he's here. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is to interview Mr. Treffry for the Town Forest Committee. There's one open position, I think, and this is for the opening until January 2021. Jonathan, you want to step up here?
Guest of honor seat.
Yes.
Get it?
Yeah.
So we did get a copy of your application, the form, where it has a few questions in it, and I think that's all we got. Yeah?
It's up on the
Is there
wall.
anyone,
Well, there were two things, yeah.
yeah, there was a second, maybe like a little
Uh,
blurb that you wrote.
Well, it was, right, we're supposed to, are we still doing that, where, you like applicants for boards to address a couple other questions
Yes.
that are in the
So
town plan?
that's all of
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. that was
so I
it.
had that in there as well.
Copy of that before it comes away. Is there anyone here that can attest to your willingness to?
Well, Pat Maynard said she was gonna be here, but she ditched me.
She did.
I thought I saw her
She-
walk in.
No, she's coming back,
Ah.
actually. She had to go home and pick something up, so.
Have you been to any of the meetings?
I thought, yeah, since
been going for-
since
Oh, okay.
December,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. I sent an email to Renee in December with the application, and I sent it to some
Our
bogus.
Marshall at Hinesburg.com or something. like
Yeah,
that, or
and you never got it, and
Yeah.
then Pat talked to Renee in January and told me at the January meeting that Renee never got anything from me. So then I did send it to you.
Right.
And we talked and tried to get it on the agenda in February, but I was out of town the night of your meeting, so,
Yeah.
and then we couldn't do it until now. So,
And
anyway,
here you are.
yeah.
Any questions or comments for Jonathan?
It's a very thorough application. Thank you for filling it out so thoroughly, and thank you for, after all you've done on the select board in previous years, thank you for again being willing to step into the town management and volunteer.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I found out their meetings last about an hour and a half.
I see.
And they spend a lot of time outside, you know, in the forest. So it sounded like a pretty good gig compared to being on the select board, honestly. No offense.
No, none taken.
Careful, you're trying to ask us for something.
Any other thoughts? I mean, I definitely, certainly
Yeah,
want to.
so, you know, the Forest Committee is a pretty good group.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was hopeful of maybe, you know, getting involved with the Trails Committee, but they have a full panel and, you know, a lot of people that are happy and look like they're going to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat's my neighbor, so they were looking for somebody to be on the board, so she called and invited me to come in. And they, you know, it just seems like they do a lot of really good things. And they have a big responsibility, honestly. And a couple of things that are going on. We're doing a public meeting
Thursday.
Wednesday that has to do with the inventory and assessment that was done, really completed last year. And just to present that to the public and take comments from the public. But the other thing that's going on is they have this grant that they've gotten, which I think is going to allow them, you know, the Forest Committee to really collect some data on usage of the town forest and whether maybe there's too much or what kind of you know, negative impacts some of the usage might have. So, you know,
All right, so more
I
to
think
come.
that will be,
Yeah.
pretty interesting to the community if we can actually get some data.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, I mean,
Seems like interesting stuff.
yeah, I mean, it's great that you're willing to do it. It seems like that board has really got a lot of firepower there and, you know, a lot of capability. But you may be in a unique spot where, you know, sort of sitting back in a committee like that, you can see how the town is supporting the committee or not supporting the committee. And I know Renee's wants to work hard this year to get more interaction, you know, between the town, the select board, and committees, and interaction between the committees too, to sort of coordinate a little bit better and you know, just support them in a better way. So if you've got ideas, and you know, we'd be certainly open to that feedback on you know, a better job we could be doing to help the committees.
All right.
So I'll make a motion. Appoint Jonathan Treffery to the Town Forest Committee for a term ending December 31st, 2021?
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, one.
Well, January 1.
January
20.
1, 2021.
Extra day.
Second. So any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thanks for
None
coming.
opposed, so that motion passed.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
I'm not going to stick around.
Okay.
What do we do if Pat comes back?
Yeah.
Don't you miss this Monday night entertainment?
Sorry.
All right.
That's okay.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is consider setting water, wastewater allocations. So this came up about a month ago. We hadn't really done it for the previous year because we didn't really have any water to allocate. There was some issues with our water supply. That's we're in a better position now. And there were a lot of questions that came up at our last meeting about who's already applied, and then questions about how much water do we actually have to allocate? And Andrea volunteered to collect some data, and I don't know if you want to just summarize what you found?
Yeah. Well, I had been wanting to know what the rationale was for the quantities that we had in our different categories, and what our actual usage was in different parts of town, and understanding that on a gut level, knowing that the state makes us allocate 150 gallons per bedroom. So for a 3-bedroom house, it's 450 gallons per day. But actual usage is much less. And so that for all of us to understand that our capacity of our well should not be based on what the state says we have to allocate, and that we may not be as kind of in such a hard place for the amount of water that we have. So I just wanted to get some numbers. So, I looked at some recent developments like Thistle Hill and Creekside, and went through a year's worth of billing for those, for individual households, did averages for them. And, it really turns out that Creekside, the average per unit, so for 3-bedroom houses over there, is 102 gallons a day. Now, there are people, households there that there's the high of 278 gallons a day and a low.
And that's an average over a year and a half.
Over a year and a half, yeah.
Year and a half.
17. Some people one household only uses an average of 17 gallons a day. So, so there's quite a variability, but nobody's using anywhere near 450.
Right, it looks like 20%, maybe
Yeah.
25%
Yeah.
of we'd say the conservative amount that we are required
Yes.
to allocate initially.
Right. So as soon as those units come online, their allocation disappears and it becomes part of the actual usage. So if you look at, we have residential allocations of 9,280 right now. So as soon as all of those units come online, it'll probably be
20%.
20%. Yeah. Yeah.
roughly.
So we'll have a lot of that captured back.
Less 2,000, less than maybe
Yeah,
2,000
right.
gallons versus 9 something.
Yeah. And, I wanted to see, well, how much is the school using? And so that, does the 5,000 gallons per day make sense for us to always keep in reserve so that as the school expands, we know there's enough water there, and for both the high school and the school. And that also gives us a chance, if there's a project that, some kind of special project that we feel is really in the best interest of the town, that we would have capacity to do that. And so category 2 is also with the kind of understanding that we want to be sure that we can do infill projects within the already developed portions of the village. So that makes sense. And we had been keeping some also for the cheese factory. So this is kind of a change because Eric has 15,000 gallons per day, and I think what he's doing is he's saying, well, let's just count the Village District, Commerce Street, and the industrial districts, and say 15,000 for that. So I think if you look on the list, you can see that Smoke and Cure is, the cheese factory already is over 5,000, and they, and so there's certainly capacity at that plant for production to go up there.
A second shift.
A second shift, and that they're going to want, that they may want more. So I feel good about leaving that 15,000 because
Yes.
that would allow, multifamily housing in the village and all that stuff. So then it comes down to category 3, which is the remainder that we have is the 13,603, and that is for all the other areas that are served by water. And at this point, we have several developments that have received sketch plan approval, and we know that we don't have capacity for all of those. So we, and that's where I think we really do need to develop some criteria, whether it's phasing or and what kinds of projects would we want to prioritize. So I think we are now in a position where we know we have water to allocate, and that the committee that we had talked about forming over a year ago should get activated so that we can deal with that 13,603. Which in general, as like Meadow Mist is beginning to get built, although Meadow Mist didn't really have an allocation to begin with, because when they applied, we had not, I'd have to talk to Eric about that.
Yeah,
But
I
the-
thought that they did, but.
Well, they don't have a water allocation. They have a
Okay.
permit from the state, but there is nothing on our Hinesburg's books that they applied for an allocation. So in a sheet that I got from Cheryl where she's, I think it's part of Eric's record keeping, it shows those projects that we have given water allocation to. So primarily, I'm just talking about water, but, anyway. So what's before us today is that there is a development project that's proposed on Richmond Road on an already developed area, and that I would think of as infill there. So I would like to make a motion to allocate I think it's 750.
What do you,
Uh,
what's your total?
31.
Oh,
He already had.
Some of
Oh,
it
he had
was
first
already, yeah.
oh, yeah, the first portion, okay.
Yeah.
So, do we have their,
Total new, 2,400.
2,400, okay.
New flows.
And this is just for the water because you already have your wastewater?
Just for the water.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and the wastewater is less.
But you already got that allocation? Or,
Was that, are they both? Is it a dual?
well, you need to apply for, if you need additional wastewater, then that's a
We
different
did-
application.
We applied in that application as well.
Yeah, do you have the application with you?
I
Or do you
do.
want me to go grab it? Okay,
I've got the letter
yeah.
with the application here.
Why don't you have a seat right here, because we're probably, if we have any more questions, that would be helpful.
So he has the total water.
Because you did have
Wastewater
600,
flows.
oh no, that was the wastewater, was 630.
The last
Water,
paragraph
wastewater service connection application.
explains it.
Question when you're ready.
Okay,
When we're ready to-
yeah. Did you have something you wanted to
Yeah,
add right to this? Go ahead.
Procedurally, our office, planning and zoning, has been waiting since last year for you to adopt these new numbers
Right.
for the current year that we're in. They
Yep.
never were done they usually get done in
July.
June or July
yes.
for the fiscal year that starts July 1.
And we didn't do it.
Right, because
Right.
we had water issues.
Yeah.
So we've been waiting and waiting. And so it sounds like you're ready to adopt this year's numbers tonight, and they're up on the board there, at least what Andrea is suggesting based on Eric's previous work.
Yeah.
Procedurally, I think it would be helpful to adopt those
First.
before you start
Yeah.
giving out
Yeah.
allocations
Fair
from
enough.
them.
Yes.
And I have a suggestion on how to modify that, which is why I'm asking.
Okay.
So, just.
I think,
take that
I'd
yeah.
agree
Right.
with that.
Well, then let
Go
me
ahead.
finish that.
Yes.
I feel like this allocation policy is in place for March, today, 19th, through June 30th, 18. What I want to be aware of, for all of us to be aware of, is just because we're saying that we have 13,603 gallons per day available to allocate, that doesn't mean that we have to give it out. And so we're not necessarily going on a first come, first served basis, that we're still in the process of developing criteria for how we would allocate, well, really all of these categories, because it's still our discretion of how those allocations go forward. So,
I mean, I would agree, and we did develop a committee that was going to help work on this to see what would be good criteria for allocating a limited supply,
Yep.
a fair allocation, and what I think matches well with our town plan, and it might be good to see if the people who were chosen, and I forget exactly who, but
Yeah.
see if we can't maybe get that done before the end of June.
Right.
So that going into next year, we're much clearer on the categories and criteria.
yep.
So it sounds like maybe if we want to move forward, we could adopt those until June 30th.
Right. But Alex has some comment on this allocation.
Yeah, so, just to make it short and sweet, the comment is, in the past, at least last year, we've made the category 2 allocation the same for water and wastewater. And in this batch, we have a discrepancy in what's up on the screen. I would suggest you simply even that, to have category 2 be 15,000 of wastewater
And
as well as water.
Yeah.
There's plenty of wastewater to go around.
Yeah.
The reason this is also important is because we oopsed when you adopted this in 2016 or whenever it was. The way it's written in the ordinance, you put a certain amount aside for category 1, you put a certain amount aside for category 2, and then everything else goes into category 3.
Defaults into 3, yeah.
It was, at least my input at that time was, it was never meant, that wasn't what was meant to happen. Category 2 are specific areas in the existing village core. And we don't want to limit how much you can allocate for that area. We want to protect a certain amount for that area.
Yes.
And there's a difference. So for example, if a project came in the industrial district, cheese plant,
Right,
let's say,
right,
and
yeah.
said, we need
20.
30,000
Yeah.
gallons.
Yeah.
The way the ordinance is now written, you put these categories in, you can't give it to them. Because we said that category 2 is exclusive. It was supposed to read, category 3 is, the balance remaining is available for the entire service area.
Yeah.
Yes,
Both the
yes.
village district and the outlying areas, so that a larger project in the village would have access
Oh, I see.
to all of
Yeah.
what's remaining. So you can't change that now, the ordinance is set, but the way to make sure we don't run into problems, for example, with the cheese plant kind of project, is just to make sure we have an adequate amount in category 2 for now. We can maybe fix that if you want, at a later date. So I think if you just even that and make it 15,000 in the wastewater category for category 2, that should be plenty.
That should,
Yeah, for the projects that we see, which could include, expansion at Vermont Smoke and Cure,
Right.
could include expansion at Foam Brewers at some point, could include the Hinesburg Center Phase 2 project that Brett Grabowski is trying to do west of Kinney Drugs. I think that's enough to make those projects happen, at least from now through June
yeah,
30th.
right. That seems to make, I mean, when you read this, it looks like category 3 was like it's holding, in a holding area, because that you're not gonna get that much growth there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so, and that's, so,
Well, we can change the language on category 3.
Well, I think you need to revise the ordinance
Yeah,
to do that.
'cause
And
it's
that
written in the
requires a
ordinance.
process that is outside of
language.
this annual
Oh, the language for the
update.
category 3?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
right in
okay.
the ordinance,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Because that's why we did this as a separate
Defined.
appendix.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So you can amend the numbers, but not the language?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah,
because you defined
each
the
year you could
categories,
reset the numbers.
definitions.
I think we should fix the ordinance
Yes,
language.
yeah,
too.
definitely,
yeah.
We can say that.
Okay.
so is that a motion that you made to?
Yes.
And.
Well, let's make a motion to do this as the annual water allocation ordinance. Right?
Well, you need both.
Yeah.
Right, but they're
wa-
two separate ordinances.
True.
Okay,
yes. You wanna do it
so we're
one
gonna do
at a time?
the water first, sure.
Yeah,
As shown here,
yeah.
category 1, 5,000, category 2, 15, the balance in category 3, 13,603. We know we think we have more than that, but for now, that we feel safe allocating that.
So I think if you change that 15, you change the 5 to 15, I think the 72 if I'm doing the math. That 72 needs to change as well.
62.
Yeah.
You mean on the wastewater?
On the wastewater side.
Yes, that is what I mean.
Yeah, so we're just now voting on the water.
Just the water.
Is there, did you catch that?
Yep.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
You all right with this? You- All right? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye? None opposed, so that passed. And we'll allocate the wastewater.
Okay, I
Got
guess,
a motion?
yeah, we didn't warn that we were changing the wastewater allocation policy. So, I mean, does it impact their application tonight?
Shouldn't if there's plenty of wastewater.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this was discussed with them at the last meeting, when we were gonna do theirs.
right.
I mean, we could still, well,
Okay,
yeah. You know, I just don't think it's gonna impact anybody
okay.
if we change that number.
Right, shouldn't,
Yeah.
but, okay. So make a motion to approve the new allocation pool for wastewater allocations, whatever. I
That's
don't know.
noted there.
Just to be clear on what the numbers are.
So
Yeah.
5,000 for category 1, category 2, 15,000, and
3 is 62.
62, 616. Okay,
yeah.
is there a second?
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed, so that passed. So we just did the allocation, which ideally is done in June
Yeah,
sometime.
you know, see, I'm not positive that I copied those right numbers, because I had that nanofiltration thing in, but it's good, I mean, we're not gonna be allocating something, if we have to change the numbers of what I actually have there,
Oh, here.
yeah, on the sheet that I did, I copied this from something that I found online of Eric's, but it might have been 2015, 16, so I'm not absolutely 100% that
Should we
those,
look it up?
well, I don't know if we have it.
Yeah,
I-
I think you need Eric for the wastewater side.
Yeah, because I
he
looked
did
at the
water
most
side.
recent available thing that I could find online, but I'm not sure that that he did it, you know, he did these numbers that we're looking at now at the beginning of February, so. But we can change it next
Yeah,
week, so we'll adopt
We'll-
this.
we'll
and-
check it.
Okay.
verify that those are correct. That sounds reasonable. So we've allocated both. Now the next item would be a potential motion to allow the project to be allocated, the water and wastewater? Yeah. You're doing all the amendments, you're doing all the motions,
So
so.
is it 3150 for the water?
That's the total.
So minus what
It's been
they,
allocated 750 gallons, and then the new allocation is 2,400. to bring
Okay.
The total to 3,150. For the whole project. For the
Okay,
water,
yeah.
yes.
So we're just allocating another 2,400. Okay. From category 3. Motion to allocate 2,400 gallons per day for the
what's the name of the project?
Yeah.
Richmond Road?
It's
Besaw
a Giro
Giro-
subdivision.
Okay.
okay.
Giro Trust, actually.
Giro Trust LLC or something? All right, so I made that motion, 2,400 gallons per day.
Do we need
For-
wastewater too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what's, I don't
So
know.
the additional wastewater allocation is 840 gallons per day, to bring that total to 1,470 gallons per day.
All right, so we'll add 840 for wastewater.
And that is, the project is the Revocable Living Trust of Teresa D. Giro.
I think we have the motion. Is there a second?
I seconded, but I'll do it again.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So there's none opposed, that passed.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would just like to point out again that, you know, we're allocating 450 gallons for a three-bedroom house for water and 210 for wastewater.
So stand by, next year there'll be
Yes.
more. Some of it will come back, probably,
The-
we expect.
The quantification, the rules are supposedly changing
Right.
to bring those together.
From the state, you
From the
think?
state.
Yeah, well, to match
It's been in the
them.
works for
Yeah.
about 4 years, so
Yeah.
hopefully this is
But,
the
I
year.
mean, to go back to the fact that this is what we have to use.
Yes.
Those numbers are what we have to use to allocate for the project. At some point, we can be monitoring what's actually consumed, and by all expectations, it frees up a good amount back.
Well, in reality, with what Andrea found is the wastewater is 210 gallons per day per unit.
Right.
That's more along the lines, the water supply division still has the 450 gallons per day.
But even the 210 for wastewater, that's not
It's
what
pretty
people are
conservative.
using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very
Which is good. I
conservative.
mean, you have
Yeah.
new low-flow toilets.
But it does
and-
mean, when I tell you some other numbers, that we have some really bad leaks someplace in the
Yeah.
sewer line.
Yeah. Still, yeah.
Yeah, if I add up the totals that we're
Yeah.
using, so I bet I
Yeah.
do need to talk to Eric about that.
Okay. All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you, yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for your patience.
So do we want to, well, we made a motion to put that committee back
Yes.
together. So
Yes.
now we'll just start moving forward with that?
Yep.
Yep, Tom, you're it.
Yeah, the two
I
of
think
you
Rob
are
Bass, Jeff French,
Dan Meyer.
What's that?
Dan Meyer.
Dan
Peter
Meyer.
Peter was on it.
Peter
and
was on
Peter,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Alex? Yep, Alex.
All right, next on the agenda is Alex, and talk about some
iPad is froze.
housekeeping changes in the zoning regulations.
So I promised Renee this would be brief, so please help me.
Should we
keep
put the
that
timer on
promise.
right now?
You should. As you probably already know, the planning commission has been working for some time on a set of what we call housekeeping changes to the zoning and the subdivision regulations. And it's a compilation of suggestions made by zoning administrators, the development review board, some landowners, about ways to clarify the regulations. Typically, things that have come up during a review that the board has had trouble with and needed clarification. So, Planning Commission worked on this for quite some time and had a public hearing, got some pretty good comments at that public hearing, and spent several meetings making additional revisions based on those, and now they've forwarded a proposal to you. I've outlined the process in the memo that I sent you that was dated February 22nd. And in that, I've outlined, it's the same memo you've seen in the past, the typical process that you followed, which is all I really want to talk about tonight. I don't want to talk about the substance of the changes. I just want to talk about protocol and scheduling. Typically, I introduce it, you think about it, we walk through some of it if you have questions, and then if you need to make some tweaks and changes, we make those, and then you go to a public hearing. And then depending on the outcome of the hearing, you might make more changes or you might just adopt it. What I've suggested in the memo is that another option is to have that discussion in the form of the public hearing, so that rather than having, the next 3 months of your meetings be dedicated to a page-by-page review of all of these changes, just warn a hearing and talk about it at the hearing. If there need to be further changes, we can have another hearing at a later date. This is what happens in the city of South Burlington. I was chatting with their planner, and their city council is comfortable with the work their planning commission does and just goes ahead and warns a hearing immediately, in part because it will lock in any future applications that might come in after that point to these proposed changes in case they're, improvements. So you could do it either way. I'm interested to hear how you'd like to proceed on that front. And then Renee and I can work on scheduling whichever option you want to pursue. The only wrinkle that I'll mention that I didn't put in the memo is that we've gotten away from having a legal review of these changes since I've been here, frankly. And it was brought up, I forget when, in the last couple of years, somebody at a public hearing said, have you had an attorney look through these? And my answer was, no. I think it was on the town plan. I said, no, it's a vision document. We typically don't do that. Most towns don't. But I queried other towns about regulation changes, and many of those towns do have legal review. We used to when I first got here. Bud Allen, who was our town attorney, took a look at things. So the Planning Commission didn't request that there be one, but I just thought I'd throw that out there in case you wanted to have that done. We don't have a budget for it. It will take substantial additional time.
Well, you're going to end up bringing in not just the changes, you'd end up bringing the entire document, right? To
Well,
some
I don't think so.
extent.
Actually, I think if you wanted it done, we would have the attorney pay attention to the changes being made and keep the review to that. It would be a Herculean task if they were to review the entire regulations
Yes.
for potential issues. But I think they could look through this summary and look at each change. The upside of that is that you have a little extra review. The downside is that there are a lot of changes, many of which are minor. And I'm always a little leery about getting an attorney to review, changing whether it's a plural or not, and because they can come up with things that, in their world seems like a big deal, but really isn't in the real world. But there are some there are some changes that are not minor, that are substantive changes. There's an entirely new outdoor lighting section, for example. I'm not sure what an attorney would say about that because they don't know anything about how outdoor lighting standards work, but they might have something to say about the construction of it in terms of the verbiage. So I just put that out there, and then I want to hear from you how you want to proceed.
Comments?
Well, my first comment would be to that point there, Alex. So putting any effort and work in the front end, having an attorney come in, doing that route, is that going to save us anything on the back end? Or it just adds more process to, there's no guarantee that it's going to be challenged or not challenged as a
Right.
regulation just because an attorney's gone through it at this end. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So is there, the public hearing, is that part of making sure it's done correctly, reality check, conforms to like what the community wants,
I think-
your expertise?
I think that the public hearing is a place for community members who to say that policy initiative is bad or good, or
Sure.
that change is bad or good. They're not going to get
don't
involved
get into the weeds
into
of
the
the-
weeds
yeah.
of is this legally enforceable. So the legal review, I think, is good in a way because it would allow you, assuming you did it before the public hearing,
Sure.
to walk into the hearing and say, volunteer planners, planning commission worked on this with professional town staff. We then had a third party take a look at it from a legal standpoint, and we've come to this, and now we put it before you. Don't worry about, legal challenges. We've thought of that. So that would be a good thing. Do I think that it's going to change things a lot? No. Am I biased? Yes, because
Yeah.
I helped write all this and think it's perfect, of course. We spent an awful lot of time on it. We
Yeah.
reached out to other towns to
Yeah.
see what their regulations look like. So it's like Andrea said, you don't know whether it's going to pose an issue in the future because you don't know whether there's going to be a challenge and whether it would hold up. Frankly, the law is not cut and dry. There are times when an attorney will say, well, if you worded it a little bit more like this, you'd be less open to legal challenge, and it'll still get challenged.
You
And
don't
then
have to explain that to us.
It may or may not be adjudicated by the courts in our favor. So it's a little hard to say.
Well, what would get challenged is if we didn't do a good process of adopting it. That would clearly.
That's
Yeah,
true.
so
So I will
that's
say that
probably where the majority of
there
the
is no
risk.
requirement for an attorney to
Yeah.
put their, imprint on this through any kind of review. The requirement is that the planning commission work on it, that there be a public hearing at that level, that you look at it, that there be a public hearing at that level, and that you adopt it, and there's appeal periods,
Right.
for people to petition and all of that.
Any other?
I like the idea that you suggested of going through it at the public hearing, and because that feels to me like it's very transparent, and we can get input if anybody shows up to give input on it. And if we did that and people thought changes needed to happen, and we had already had a lawyer go through it, that would be kind of a waste if we had to change something that the lawyer had already approved. So I think I agree with you about maybe skipping the step of having a lawyer look over it, but I like the idea of going through it step by step at a public hearing.
And not doing it twice, because usually he goes through it step by step for us
Yeah.
at a meeting, and then we do it all over again.
Yeah.
So from my selfish standpoint is, I only want to listen to it once.
I like that idea. Marilee, I don't want you to think that that the legal review is really part of that calculus. These two options to have you spend a few months, weeding through it and then going to a public hearing versus going to a public hearing now, that's sort of a separate decision from whether you want a legal review.
Yes, yeah, I understood that.
Alex, did you say that if we warned a public hearing tonight, this would go into force immediately?
Yeah, so it would go into force the moment that your warning appears in the paper. That's
Right.
then the zoning administrator would have to apply these changes to any permits that came before her for a period of 150 days. So it was the legislature's way of saying if a town is actively trying to improve their regulations, we're not going to let applications slide in while it's actively being considered by the select board. So yeah. So in the past, I've said, hey, figure out what you want before you warn it, because it's not really fair to warn something that's never going to pass if you think there's a huge issue. So I'll reiterate, I like Andrea said, just going to a hearing, but it really depends on your level of understanding of what's in here and frankly, your level of trust of the planning commission. If you feel like they had an open and good process,
They got a lot of input.
they got
in their
input, and that
public
they
view.
themselves are a 9-member board who reflect the community, then, you should feel good about going right to a hearing. If you feel like, yeah, they're great, but we feel like we need to own this and you want to understand every piece of it, then we should default to what we've done in the past, which is more time consuming.
I'm feeling like we just went through the town plan and we did it a little at a time, and it was, it wasn't painful, but it was, but in the end, we got to really know it. We did get some input. We did make a few changes, and then so therefore, when we warned it as a public, it went through pretty good. Now this is different being zoning, but I feel, being a little selfish, that I would like to understand it pretty well before I present it, and I think for me to understand it isn't just to read it, it's to sort of ask questions and hear some discussion about it. But I'm open to maybe keeping it to one meeting or two where we look at the changes, we, as a select board, ask the questions. Obviously, people can come, they can ask their own questions, kind of hash it out a little bit, particularly the language, and feel like we understand it, and then warn it as now we can stand behind it, and go through that process too. So maybe a shortened process, but still have some select board and public discussion to understand it and to ask those questions, rather than do it in the public meeting. Like, oh, I didn't know what that meant. And so that's just my
I have
thought.
heard some comments about it, which is why I wouldn't feel comfortable
Going right to a
proposing a
hearing.
public hearing. I would not be comfortable with that at all right now. Not that that's a negative or a positive about the document. Like Phil, I want to have the time to dive into it a little bit more than I think we have.
Agreed. I think that warning a public hearing tonight is premature, but it could happen perhaps the next meeting or some, it doesn't have to happen later this summer.
December.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not like it has to be done right away, but we shouldn't sit on it either, because
Nor do we want
December,
to.
gets busy, I think, I've been told.
That's in December.
Well, I guess I would say that these are housekeeping changes. You know, they're not major revisions to the regulations.
Which is, yeah, it'll go quickly, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
It could, as long as you don't dwell in the minutia.
Right.
Right.
And if if you'd like me to try to highlight for you the real policy changes in these, I can do that. I mean, it's 7 pages worth of changes.
Yes.
And it will take you a very long time if you just say, okay, let's start at the first one on
Yeah.
page 1.
I don't think that's what we need to do. I think the town plan, we did chapter by chapter. I mean, I think we could, have a meeting in the near future where we dedicate an hour and a half to going over it. We have an opportunity to read it. I think the track changes is a very helpful way to do it. We can forward questions ahead of time, ideally, so you know what some of our questions are. So if we prepare, then it could be a productive meeting rather than anything on page 1, anything on page 2. So I think that would be the way to do it. Dedicate a little time, prepare ahead of time, and hash it out with you. And then, are there any changes we want to make? Maybe the following meeting, we might say, here's what we're thinking about, do it, and then we'd be ready.
So I looked over the summary, and it seemed like a lot of the changes, or a fair amount of the changes, were just wording changes, or to make something that we had more in alignment with state regulations. And then others were bigger changes or more significant. And maybe you could highlight those for us so that we can look at them more thoroughly.
I can do that.
The wording changes, I don't need to look at. I trust you on that.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Renee and I can work on a schedule, with you, Phil, that works for your board to get that started.
Yeah, maybe.
The April meetings right now are April 2nd and the 18th would be the first and third meetings. I don't know if you want to.
And we could shoot for the 18th and see
The
what comes
18th.
up.
Okay.
If that fits everyone's schedule, your schedule, you have to stay late. I mean, I think we have a little flexibility. And I think by having that additional meeting, at least that one additional meeting, it gets the word out there that, hey, you're doing it on Front Porch Forum or whatever, but there'll be some discussion and we'll get a chance for people to, maybe they better pay attention.
My aging eyes stand corrected. It's April 16th.
So yeah, happy to work that out with
Okay.
Renee and you, Phil. You guys work on the agenda together, right? Okay.
Yeah, I tell Renee what to put on the agenda as soon as she tells me what's on the agenda.
It's a great system.
Does that satisfy you?
It satisfies
Yeah,
me.
Okay.
You didn't really answer the legal review question, but
Okay,
if,
so we can open that up. I mean,
that's time and money.
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's.
I'm less inclined at this front end to do this. If we see a need going through this process, perhaps,
We
but
could keep that in the back of our mind
Yeah.
as we're reviewing it, saying, do we think there's some value there? I would ask the question, in the last 5 years, has anybody, challenged what's actually in the zoning versus the process?
I think it would be fair to say that the Hannaford project involved a challenge to the way the official map was constructed.
Yes.
In the end, the Development Review Board made a ruling that didn't require that challenge to be adjudicated.
Well, the front yard, side yard thing was pretty confusing. But it didn't get challenged.
Yeah, the other technical aspects of that project, aside from the official map, I think there were some differing opinions. I don't think it was a matter of the construction of the regulation. It was how it was being interpreted, and so no, I don't think our regulations have been challenged. That's not to say that they couldn't be or won't be,
Yeah.
but it's not typical. Okay, well, very good.
So I have just one other thing, which I was unsure if I was going to bring this up or not, but I did talk to Renee recently, and over the last year, I've been approached by a couple of, I'll say, developers, people who are developing projects, not necessarily big ones, saying, yeah, the DRB process has been very hard. And then I've been approached by some, people just splitting their lot into two, some simple things. And they've sort of said, this process is really hard. And in the back of my mind, when I had heard that, I said, well, I knew this was coming along to sort of clarify and simplify and the regulations. And I kind of thought, well, that should help solve that problem. And I'm just sort of wondering if that in itself will help to make the process feel smooth, I guess. So I'll just sort of leave that.
I'll answer you.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
These changes will help in specific areas that we've run into issues with, but the input that I get along those lines is much more general about how long it takes, how difficult it is to have to hear a neighbor try to gum up your project's works, and how much it costs, to hire surveyors and hire engineers and to go through that process. I don't want to sugarcoat this. I don't think the housekeeping changes are going to fix those basic issues, which frankly are just issues with development review. Could we be doing a better job in making it easier on our applicants? Sure. We'd probably have to think a bit about how to do that. This probably isn't going to make a big difference on that front. It will help certain landowners, and there are several of which are looking for when you're going to talk about this so they can show up and advocate for some of the changes
Yeah.
that they help propose and,
Yeah.
and work on through here. But the general process is a somewhat laborious one that involves spending time and money.
So anyways-
They're going to complain no matter what you do.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I don't think it's all that different from other towns.
Do you know how it does compare, how our DRB process compares with other towns?
To be honest, I don't. I hear lots of difficult things about the city of Burlington's process, and we frequently get comments from folks that say, well, it's so much easier here than it is there, but they are in a class of their own. How we compare to other towns of our size, like Richmond or Westford or Milton, I don't really have a good sense of that. I will tell you that having worked in the field for 15 years now, Andrea's right about the zoning side at the very least. I mean, the zoning, getting a permit is not something people like to have to do. Waiting for an appeal period to go by before you can have your contractor pour concrete is not something that people like to do. Paying an impact fee to help fund the addition to the police or the new police station is not something people like to have to pay. So from a zoning standpoint, it's very difficult to ever have fully satisfied customers because it's just things people don't want to do. From the development review side of the coin, there's a little bit of that as well, but I don't want to say we couldn't make it easier or do a better job of it. Always room for improvement if we know where those improvements need to be. But I don't think the housekeeping changes are going to be a silver bullet on that front.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've come to realize, that it's, it'll help a little bit, and it's a smart thing to do. But
I will say that I think that since Mitch has been here and has been working as the development review coordinator, that things have been much more streamlined in terms of getting applications in and getting a clear sort of indication of what needs to be addressed. He just has a slightly different way of looking at things, which has helped me in my sort of
good.
looking
Yeah.
at projects. So I'm hopeful that maybe some of those comments will change a bit over time, but it does take some time.
Is there a DRB education process other than looking at the regs?
Yeah, we do some training with them and some introductory kinds of work when they first join. Beyond that, what we do is we make them aware of continuing ed kind of opportunities, and twice a year we try to bring those to them. So in the summer, early summer, we take them out on actual site visits to see completed projects and to go to other towns and see what's happening there. And in the winter, we try to do a training of some sort, either on new regulations that have passed and how they should be interpreted. We did one just last meeting, I think, where we talked about the new town plan and how the DRB has a role to play in the implementation of that. We haven't had sort of a general training for quite a long time about process and, meeting, how to conduct a meeting and that sort of thing. But we do make an effort, twice a year to give them training in a couple different ways.
And there are, certainly extension and, VLCT offers workshops throughout the year.
They do, but unfortunately, most of those are held during the
Yes.
day,
Right.
and our board members have, jobs, and so I always make those available. I tell them that the town will cover the cost for their registration, but frankly, very few of them take up those opportunities because they have to work.
Well, I'm glad I brought it up because, I think there's some level of opportunity here. And maybe we'll have more discussion as we go, but we'll get through this process anyways. And I'm sure they had input on some of this because some of them were questions that they had or they struggled with, so.
Yep.
This is gonna help somewhat. Anything else for Alex?
Maybe that's something we could, we haven't met with the chair for quite some time. We usually meet with them and,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we both heard concerns
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the DRB and just the length of the process and the back and forth. And it might be a good time to address it and just see if there's issues going on that,
How can we help?
how can
Yeah.
we help?
With our understanding, it's not an easy
Right.
thing to do. It's,
No,
and
I'm happy to help facilitate that.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
you want to have a powwow with the chair, we can, and Mitch.
And
we
Mitch,
can
yeah.
talk that through, and maybe
Yeah.
it's an opportunity for one of our next trainings to see where we can gain some efficiencies in the process in terms of how the meetings run, or something else. Happy to try. I'm not sure I know that there's a particular answer to pluck out.
either, but
yeah, yeah.
I've heard it enough where I think it would be valuable to just delve into it a little bit and see if there's something we can.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
All right, we have a lot here going on.
Oh, next are pretty quick.
You never say that. So we have a number now of yearly tasks, I think, for the select board. Appointments and reappointments to statutory positions, and that's in our,
It's in your Dropbox.
I'm gonna try to pull that up.
It's not listed with a number, it just says,
Organizational motions.
yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
And that motion on the appointments, you shouldn't repeat following twice. You should appoint individuals listed to the following positions for a one-year term might sound better.
I'll make that motion. I move the board appoint these individuals to the following positions for one-year term. Suzanne Neller, Pam Durda, and Sue Johnson as fence viewers. Is Norm Smith in red because he doesn't want to do it?
No, he's in red because he hasn't responded yet.
Okay. Lanny Dennison as weigher of coal, Paul Wizerack as tree warden, Frank Koss as constable, Ginny Roberts as town service officer, Ed Waite as fire warden and animal control officer, Al Barber as fire chief, Renee Marshall as road commissioner, and Mitch Sispis, how do you say it?
Sipes.
Sipes as E911 coordinator.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 So you're
None
appointing
opposed?
Norm Smith?
No, we're leaving that open.
Leaving it open?
Until we,
in case he's, okay.
He'll have to
all
come
right.
in now.
yes.
Yes.
Make
Uh,
a motion to designate the Citizen as the newspaper of record in which required warnings and/or notices are published.
Second.
And that's been working out pretty well for us.
Yeah, I mean, although the Citizen is the only weekly, although we still have the Hinesburg Record that
Yeah.
we put things in, but because of the timing, we use the Citizen for those types of notices and warnings.
All right. All those in favor of using the Citizen for the newspaper of record, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed. That's passed. The bonding.
So it says here that required public to be bonded. So I make a motion to recognize crime and fidelity coverage of $500,000 per occurrence as provided via the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Property and Casualty Inter-Municipality Fund as the bonding instrument required by 24 VSA Section 32B. 832, it looks like 832B.
Yeah, second it.
So it's seconded. Any discussion? I think we talked about the amount has been the same for a number of years.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion's passed. Now the
Liquor licenses?
liquor license, we have to convene
Oh,
as
yes, I'll make a
the,
motion to convene as the Board of Liquor Control.
I'll second that for you.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now the Liquor Control Board.
So in front of you, you'll
Seven.
have,
Is there 7 applications?
we have Jolly, Lampman's, 116 Wine and Spirits, Kenny Drugs, Travia's, Jiffy Mart, and
Maybe we'll hold off on Cedar Knoll.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we,
It doesn't matter. You guys can vote on all of them if you want. I'll just
Okay.
abstain.
All right.
what you've done
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
past.
okay, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. So, and then
but we
Cedar,
do all have to sign them.
did Tom sign?
So I think you have to sign someplace where it's maybe.
Oh, yeah, it said right that he's a principal in the establishment or something like that.
Missy just wanted to be sure that everybody's here somehow has to sign. So there must be a place on the application where somebody can,
Well, there's approved and disapproved.
oh,
so we'll just have 4? You're saying you can't have just 4 sign?
no, she said everybody who's at the meeting has to sign.
Really?
All right, well, if
So-
we approve it, then you can sign it. How about that?
All right.
If we approve it.
Yeah, so we'll
Yes.
vote on it,
Flush
and
the
you'll
vote.
abstain on the vote, but then you'll sign it.
And there was a reach out to Chief Goss saying, were there any issues? And his response was,
No issues at all.
no issues at all, which is good to know. Any other discussion?
So at a later date, we'll get good times in Papa Nick's.
And the public house, we
And
think,
the
is on a
public-
different schedule, maybe? We're not sure.
Wow.
We're
We'll
all on the
see.
same
There.
schedule. It's not everybody is
Yeah.
on the same schedule.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I'll abstain.
None opposed and 1 abstained. So that motion passed.
What, are those first class, second class?
They're variety.
Usually we have
Yeah,
listed in the
Listed
past
first
what
class.
it is.
Where does it say if it's first class versus, do you know?
I think ours is a first class because it's a
Oh, here
bar.
it is, I found it. So this is second class.
The stores would be second class, I think.
I got it now. So these are all the second class ones.
So that's Jolly, Lampman's,
Kenny,
Okay,
This is second class.
Jiffy Mart.
just and Jiffy Mart.
116,
That's wine and
Wine and
Wine and
Spirits, and Kinney,
And-
and Coco Mart, which is the Jiffy
Jiffy.
Mart.
Jiffy.
So Travia's and Cedar Knoll are first class.
Correct.
First-class establishments.
Where people are buying their tickets for the Calcutta.
That's right. The 14th of April.
Don't miss it.
So, all those, did we already vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to
Now
vote
we just
again?
have to pass them around so we sign.
Yes.
We just do a
So
site,
then
site
there's two,
visit.
there's two signatures for the Cedar Knoll one, because it's
Okay.
different.
Can we
And as
sign all
we're
those at the
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we'll sign them all at the
You
end.
gonna do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
otherwise they get lost.
All right.
Or I'm just not paying attention.
Next item on the
Well, we
agenda.
have to-
Adjourn as the Board of Liquor Control.
Oh,
Oh,
I'll make a
let's-
motion to adjourn.
And
Thank
I'll
you,
make
Al.
the second to come out of it.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, that motion passed. Now back to item 12, Town Administrator Report.
All right. Let's see. I guess I don't have a lot on that one. I think the highway department's been out a lot for the storm, so they put in a lot of hours, and I think we're exhausted from the storm. So fortunately, there's a little reprieve for them, I think, and so that is definitely good. Water department, I haven't heard of any significant issues. Their issues, they've been trying to keep up with sidewalks. So the sidewalk has been another challenge, and so I think we've asked for people's patience on that this year, just because of the continuing storms. And other than that, I think things are very active and busy, but I think we're
Okay.
proceeding
No
along.
word on the other well from Blackwater.
Black Rock.
Black Rock.
Yep. So everything tested out well. So it's ready to go. I sent an email to Wayne Elliott just to kind of find out what the steps are to make
Yeah.
sure. The hydrogeologist contacted me today and just wanted to make sure there's a permit process and stuff, so I can't just start drilling. There's other steps that need to take place. So I forwarded her email to Wayne Elliott and just wanted to find out exactly what we need to do and what needs to happen prior to that.
So
Taking
am I
place.
understanding that BlackRock is drilling a second well instead of doing the stuff in
Because
the...
it was less costly.
Yeah, because it was, we consulted with,
Frost?
and Rob Frost, and he said it would be challenging to have the pipe to follow exactly like that. So it would be easier to abandon that well and drill another one right next to it. So that's what they're going to do.
Because in the email, I think that you forwarded about that, Eric must have transposed some numbers.
did.
He did.
Okay, because
And
I
that's
kept going,
why-
this sure looks like it's more to me, and then I...
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I think I added something to that email just to showing the right numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
did see that.
Yeah. So no, he just transposed the numbers. So no. So that's the plan. But I'm just more interested in finding out what steps we need to take before drilling happens. If what other permitting needs to happen. I know Rob is doing his own. He has things that he had to check with the state for permitting, but there's things that we need to do, and also financing and all of that. Just find out what steps we need to.
But, well, we
taking
don't know
place.
yet whether it's... We haven't... I mean, weren't we going to do all the testing on that other well to see if it yielded, and did everything come back?
I
That
think
it...
some general
Testing.
Testing
water
came back.
quality.
Water quality,
but
but weren't we going to do the pump test and all that?
I think that happens as at a later, once it's
Yeah.
drilled and they
Right.
do the pump down, they do that testing
Right, because
takes place.
we aren't obligated to do anything until
right.
all of that. But
they
what
still
they're
have to go down.
Yes, but what they're doing now is they're starting with the assumption that it meeting all the criteria that the state needs, as opposed to what they did previously, which was
Right,
just
just
drill a
drill.
well that wasn't the right size. So this
Right.
time it's going to be the right size, and okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
nothing that we talked about that needed to be done to meet the requirements for the state have been done yet. on this second well.
No, I think
Right.
just a preliminary quality,
Yeah.
water
Right.
quality
So we're
check.
assuming that it's the same
Yeah.
quality because it's
Right.
right next to it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I want to bring Wayne into it right now, too,
Yes.
Yeah, that's
especially
a
with
great
Eric,
idea.
Eric
Yes.
being
Yeah.
out. Just want to
How
make
long
sure
will
we're-
Eric be out for?
He's out for a month, so he returns. I have it upstairs, but April 16th, maybe
Okay.
something like that.
Really, the next step is drilling the well deep enough to ensure that there's enough water there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
they're gonna
not-
drill it deeper.
That's not a guarantee yet,
Right,
but
no,
Right,
that's
right.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
So this is still a risk on BlackRock's part.
Yep,
yeah. So I mean, we
Okay.
still, yeah. I just want to make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row. We're doing
think that's a
any
great
permits
idea.
that we
Yes.
need to
Yes.
have
Yes,
in
for sure.
place, so that we don't end up getting hit.
and
with
I think that was their suggestion too. Let's make sure we go into it with everybody's saying, here's what needs to get done, so we don't have to
Right.
duplicate anything or waste money
Yeah.
or time.
at this point, there's probably a little time before the driller can get back out.
Yeah, yes, but it's possible. It's a few things in his way. Yeah. But spring's tomorrow, so
Yeah,
should be
that's
all right.
Everything changes tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's,
Any questions? Any other questions?
Did you receive any comments on town meeting into your office?
other than all positive ones. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's, I guess, something you guys want to talk about and for the select board forum too.
Select board forum now, so.
And there you go. Good segue.
Yeah. I received, that I shared with some folks here, a few positive comments about the meeting, perhaps just because it was so short. I don't know if that cuts both ways, but general approval, were the comments that I received. That we were doing a good job at that meeting.
Being open with everything as much as
Yeah,
we
I think
can
people
is
really
helpful.
appreciated
Yeah.
the introduction and
Yeah. Okay, anything else for a select board forum?
Well, I also want to say, I think all the work we put in up front and all those open meetings about the budget and particularly all the work you did,
Yeah,
Renee, with
Renee.
the charts and everything. So we really thought about what questions people might ask, and all except for the reversal of numbers, we were prepared for.
Yeah,
Just for minutes.
that was great.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Well, all I have is the Calcutta.
Okay,
Get your tickets. It's going to be fun. April 14th, 5 o'clock, Cedar Knoll Country Club. About half the tickets are gone, so there's time, but they are.
and places you can get the tickets online at the,
Jen's on vacation this week.
okay,
So actually, there's a number of us, and I posted on Front Porch Forum
I saw that.
last week. There's a number of individuals who are going around town selling them. So a little bit different setup, but Jen will be back Monday, next Monday maybe, somewhere in there.
I think so.
So they will be for sale at the town hall, but they're not going to be available at the door. So
I had somebody approach me today from Williston asking about it because of the guest who's going to be there.
yeah, see,
Yep,
Ron Fleming.
yep,
It's going to be great.
yep.
So
They're excited.
Yep.
And can you go without buying a Calcutta ticket, or that gets you in the door and you do all the things? Okay,
Because there's a buffet and
yep,
the likes of that. So it's well worth the $75 for two people. And it supports a great cause.
right. Anything else on select board forum?
no, are we going to approve the minutes?
That's next. I
Yeah,
think,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll thank you for doing the wastewater work. That's helpful, and we'll get the committee back. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
back in
yeah. I mean,
line, so-
there's so much information that's there that I said to Renee and Joy, I said, if we had $100,000 and we could just, because some stuff is upstairs in planning and zoning,
Right.
some stuff is in, Cheryl has it, other stuff Eric has. I mean, and it's probably true for not only water and wastewater, but the road situation,
Yeah.
that just some kind of system, and that's, well, when we talk about Observatory Road, I'll mention that as well.
Okay, yeah.
Of just working towards
Some
some kind of at
consolidation.
least filing system, so who has what where.
Right.
So, but it's all there. It's just a matter of finding, and then and being able to use it so we can really be doing some planning based on history. I mean, we have a lot of history.
Yeah.
So,
All right, shall we move on to reviewing the minutes? So we have February 19th, which was a select board meeting, and then the 5th of March, which was town annual meeting.
Yep.
So is there a motion for
I
the,
can start by making a motion to approve the February 19th minutes of our meeting.
Second.
That was the one from 20,108.
oh
oh, is
yeah,
that what it said? You know, I looked at them, I didn't see
yeah.
that.
With
Uh,
I missed the,
As with
In the
amendments,
future.
with
corrections.
corrections. Oh, yeah, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
So I had looked them over, I didn't see anything there. I did see I had an action to follow up to the CCRPC TA. And I did do that and got a return acknowledgement, so I think it's moving forward. That's what Richard Watts was here for. Everyone ready? Good to go? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. So that one correction on the,
I'll make a motion to approve the March 5th, 2018 minutes of town meeting.
Second.
all right?
I thought that the last sentence on Article 2, Phil also mentioned several other new employees who have helped fill the roster. We should probably put their names in there.
Good point.
We
You-
could,
yeah.
yeah, because the other ones have names, so,
Yeah.
New Road,
Bart,
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 John.
John,
John.
the road.
new officers.
Well, Joy was already
Joy
there.
was mentioned, I
Yeah.
think.
Was Suzanne Mentag?
Oh,
now?
Suzanne, yeah.
Frank Bryan for officer.
Oh, yeah, the new officer,
Yeah.
yeah. I think those are the four, yeah. So will you be, do you have these? No, so that would be Missy.
that's
We'd have to
Missy,
let
yeah.
Missy know that.
Do we have Missy double check the numbers?
I didn't look at them,
Or
but I
somebody
thought
else
about it.
double checked it.
We'll take care of that next year. town
I
meeting.
just thought that was great. Well, we're gonna invite Carl in here for all of our budget review meetings.
He's our editor.
All right, I thought they were short and sweet.
I didn't catch who seconded that motion.
Tom?
I did.
Tom, yeah.
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed, that motion passed. And I guess what happens is we sign them when they become part of the,
Because they'll become part of the,
No, well, I mean, I'd have you sign them tonight, but you're wanting her to make some
Yeah.
changes to it.
so we'll get
so
it
then
next
we'll
time.
just sign it next time, yeah. Then you
Okay,
can have
yeah,
it and
and
be
then I'll
ready
have
to
a
go.
signature line and,
All right.
And then just forward them along and I'll put them out
okay.
as well.
Yeah.
So you'll have them in
Okay.
case they're lost or something.
You can have a motion to consider the warrants, and I think it's just payroll.
It is. And I'll make that motion for you.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So none opposed, that motion passed, and it's there for review, if anybody wants to review it. And So
into-
we will then go back into executive session. We have 2 topics to discuss. Because we made a motion already, I guess we can just go back in without a vote. We'll stop the broadcast, and if there are any, there's no expectation that we'll take any action. If we were to, we would come back. It would be reflected in the minutes, and so I think we can go back to executive session. Thank you.
Ian,
Good
I
night.
wasn't here when you went into executive session. Do you remember who made